What's going on, guys? Welcome back to Tactical Foul. I'm Kyle Grew, of course. Today we have a very special guest. We're going back across the pond from Stoke, and you already know I have a very special question for him as soon as we get in introducing him. He's a level 4 coach, full-time coach, and when I say full-time, it's nothing like we've talked about before. He's all over the place. He's also the head coach of PCT Coaching, but also the host of their podcast, PCT. Please welcome Martyn Irvine.
Hello, I think it's a good day for you and good evening for us over here in the pond. And I just want to say thank you for having us on. It's going to be a good time.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. So before we get into all the the serious stuff, probably not that serious, but we're gonna have a good conversation. There's one question. As soon as I saw you were from Stoke, that I had to ask you, and I'm sure you've been asked this before, but would Messi be able to handle a cold Tuesday night in Stoke?
I think he would. The guy's a genius, but I think as a one-off, he may struggle. Some really good players have come to Stoke on a wet, windy night and have really struggled. So I'd like to see that. I'd really like to see him come and play at the Bet365 and see if he can do it. But yeah, I'm sure he could. A man of his genius.
Yeah, for sure. I've always loved that. Like, as if the guy who a lot of people think is the best player of all time. I mean, yeah, he could get bullied, but he'll probably figure something out.
I think that was the Stoke of old. I don't know if he'd get bullied as such now, but certainly under Tony Pulis in those days, yeah, he might have struggled a little bit.
For sure. So now that we've got that out of the way, I do want to talk. We talked about, like, you are all over the board with you have a full schedule. So I think I looked. You are. So you'll have to explain this to probably a lot of people, just because I don't think it's as familiar. But a PDP coach, correct?
Yeah.
For
That's
is it
right,
Witten Albion, and then there's a lot of letters. ESP. Hang on, let me see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's the Education and Semi-Professional Football Academy.
Okay.
So what that does, it goes into semi-professional clubs around the step 4, step 5 within the English footballing pyramid, and runs an academy.
Oh, nice.
So the players will get, I'm not sure what the equivalent is with yourselves, but like a BTEC in sports coaching and fitness studies. And so with that, they train pretty much full time. So they train 3 times a week, have a fixture on a Thursday, and then Friday is full education day. So it's quite full on for the players.
Okay.
And as coaches, I think it's really interesting to work with players day in, day out, and it gives you a taste on what you need to be or where you need to be at.
Well, that's great. I am trying to rack my brain to think of anything that we have that's even close to equivalent to that, and I don't think there really is. So that's a really cool thing. I mean, the closest thing I can think of is we have what is like it's called IMG Academy, which is a school. So like high schoolers go. It's a school, but you go there for sports. You have to be a top level athlete to go there, but you also do your studies right alongside. It's basically like college, but before college type of thing.
That's what this is. It is ultimately an education program that's supplemented by football.
Oh.
But the level of coaches that the academy sort of push out is that it's a minimum B licensed coach. So you're going to get, hopefully,
Right.
and I'm speaking, quite holistically, hopefully you get a good standard of coaching.
Right, for sure.
So the players get that exposure to almost full-time football as well as studying. So it's quite an item. But we probably struggle where we are geographically, because we have sort of Manchester United, Manchester City, Everton, Liverpool, Stoke City, all bidding for their BTEC and education programs. So
right.
It's very, very difficult to recruit players, but when you do, it's very pleasing to work with them day in, day out.
And so then what that does is it's just kind of a feeder to where, like, obviously at first you're competing with those clubs, but ultimately you would probably, if there's a success story where one of your players or whatever goes on, like that's a massive success for you guys, obviously.
Oh, massively. I'm talking sort of 3 years ago now, and one of our players actually, he's over in the States now at university, and forgive me, but I'm not sure where. But he's captaining his university side, and
that's amazing.
he's going out and doing really well. So Joe Joe Ruane is doing really well with his footballing career at the minute.
Oh, that's amazing. Yeah, and that's kind of, I coach within the youth game, right? I coach mainly younger kids, but like that's the thing is like, you know, if there's ever an opportunity for our kids to like go on and do something better, it's like, yeah, that's a success story. Like it's not like like dang, you want to hold on to them. It's like, no, it's great. Like you want them to go on and do whatever is best. And especially you're talking about education, they probably age out of the program similar to like with me where I'm not necessarily losing that many kids. So it is kind of just like, yeah, I want them to go progress however far they can progress, and after that I'll try to keep, close eye on their career.
I think with that we've had lads who've been in sort of the professional game in academy systems and come out of the game, and we're fortunate as youth coaches that we're coaching people as well as footballers. So
right.
We have to teach them or help them understand life, and that those bumps in the roads are always there. Life isn't fair.
Yeah.
Same as you're not always going to get the decisions in the game. You're not going to get the decisions you like out of the game in life. So I think we play a vital part in terms of that 16 to 18-year-old sort of transitioning,
right,
and hopefully not losing them.
Yeah, for sure.
In terms of keeping them involved and enjoying the game.
That's one big thing that like I've talked about is just like that. Obviously, as a coach, you got to progress your players, you got to develop them technically, tactically, these things. But like, if there's anything that I can really do, it's like to preserve like their like enjoyment and their joy and their love for the game, because then that carries on. That can leave a much bigger legacy than me turning them into a decent footballer, right? Like that's a much bigger thing.
Yeah, and I think alluding to that, we all like to win.
Oh yeah.
But in terms of winning, what is that described as? So for me, yes, it'd be nice to go and win every game and comfortably play the football we like. But it's ultimately down to the players that we've got, and I think that I'm going to quote a friend here, and Steve Salis, who got a fantastic book. I'm not sure if you've heard of it, called Educating Football, and his advice is don't be a downgrade. So every time you coach a player, be better than the coach that they had previously.
Right.
Whatever aspect that may be, so that when they go on to hopefully staying within the game and coach and continue that legacy, they'll never be a downgrade, and we're always raising standards through our legacy.
No, that's all right. He wrote a book, then it's clear. That's good. That is sound advice without a doubt. So besides that, there's obviously, like we talked about, there's quite a few other places you are in terms of coaching. Talk us through some of those other places.
Where to start?
I know.
So yeah, the main sort of job in the day is with Witten Albion and their under-18s program. So as we mentioned there, trying to get players to go through and represent the first team.
Right.
That's difficult within itself. Putting an 18-year-old into the adult game. But I think then with other roles that I've got up until recently, until COVID pandemic, I was working with the English FA as a coach mentor. So I'd go into grassroots clubs and mentor coaches and help them on their pathway to the coaching coach. I know we spoke off air about the different pathways, but the level 1, which would be I think equivalent of your D license, the level 2, which is then the C, and then the B license, and so on.
Yep.
And then during this pandemic, when it all started, I started the PCT podcast.
Okay.
Where we speak with a range of guests and just hopefully speak to them about their journey, just in case there's somebody out there, and I'm sure you've been there, I've been there, when you're thinking, why me? Everything's going against me. I've got injuries, the weather, the environment, but then just to see their journey and where they are and where they've been,
right?
It resonates that they went through some tough times and adversity, and you're always going to go through that as a coach. And then sort of coming off from that, I work with players on a one-to-one basis, so technical and tactically, helping them with the sort of in-game decision-making, strength and conditioning, game-relevant movements. And I'm fortunate enough to work with 2 or 3 grassroots teams and a reserve team with a semi-pro side. So it is pretty much 7 days a week, and I don't think I'd want it any other way.
Oh, you when we talk about full-time in America, that's usually it's referring to like you have 4 teams or 4 spots are filled up. And it's still about 7 days a week, but I mean, I do wonder because it is definitely different here. Where typically, if you're coaching, you're with one club or whatever. That's usually how it is. There's cases where you're with other clubs, or maybe you have a college and a club job, but typically you're kind of in one place. I feel like it is definitely different in England, where it's a lot more common for coaches to just kind of be all over the board, and you're just kind of picking up whatever you kind of can. Is that kind of the case?
Yeah, I mean, going back maybe 5 or 6 years, I used to be a chairman of a grassroots club.
Okay.
So we had 34 teams, boys, girls, disability teams, adult teams, futsal. We were rather big, and it just started to take a bit of toll on the family life. I'm married and I've got two beautiful girls, and it started to take up a lot of time. So
Right.
that was a great experience, because you have to deal with parents and them. So bear in mind, we had 34 teams. You're probably looking at over 350 players,
Right.
all with two parents who think their son or daughter is number one. So you're dealing with phone calls every day. But from that, I decided to sort of branch out and go on my own. I felt that I could add value to two teams, and I'm fortunate that a lot of local grassroots teams have put sort of faith in me to help them develop their players. And we're starting to see, hopefully starting to see a bit of a bit of development. But we have been struck by, as everybody has, this pandemic, and it's hard to gain momentum and consistency when we're being forced into lockdowns.
Absolutely. And I guess to kind of go on that, would you say that has been maybe the hardest thing with COVID in terms of like the coaching profession, is just like the momentum? Because for me, like, momentum is such this like powerful force, right? If you have momentum, you can kind of keep going and you can do a whole lot of things. But I think with COVID, it's momentum halted, and not just once, but twice.
So yeah, we've over in the UK, we've probably been locally locked down 3 times now.
Oh,
So
wow.
the season came to an abrupt end in March, which is the back end of the season. Your teams are starting to fly, and
Yeah.
I was fortunate to be working in a football academy with a club called Port Vale, and a League Two club.
Yeah.
We were doing really well, transitioning from 9v9 to 11 versus 11, and then the season stopped. And from there, you're seeing these kids 3-4 times a week to nothing.
Yeah.
And they've gone from extremely social human beings to being, and there's nothing wrong with being locked in with your family, but from playing football 5-6 times a week to nothing. And I think that's been the biggest, for me personally, issue that we've had to deal with as coaches, is that how do we reintegrate them into a society that has been forced indoors,
Right.
and isolated from the world, and also get them to be enjoying it physically? Because now, with everything that we've had, I would like to say that majority of players are now really wanting the enjoyment side more than the competition side.
Yeah, for sure.
I would throw out there. So that's been tough. And when you get back to them, it's then the social side and the psychological side of trying to get them involved. And is that person still the same? We don't know what goes on behind closed doors. Are they in a tough situation at home?
Right.
We don't know, and you've just got to try and make that environment right so they come and enjoy it, and they can trust you and have those secondary sort of relationships with you.
Yeah, I mean, it was it's not the same as, like, obviously, like, for us, we have a little break where the kids can go off and have a little bit of fun in summertime, just kind of stop worrying about soccer and whatnot, so they don't get burned out. But this year we come back, and typically we're able to kind of just go right in. Everyone's ready to go. They're recharged. They're refreshed. But like it's you would think that would be the same way, but the truth is, it's like you're talking about the social aspect. Like, they just wanted to be around their friends for a minute, and so like you battle that where it's like we've missed so much. We have to work really hard. We have to get back to this thing, but also find that balance of like be understanding that these kids have been locked up. They've never dealt with anything like this. To be fair, no one's ever dealt with this, so no one has answers for these children who have no answers either. And so it's like there's the social aspect of it is immense. And so finding that balance of like we gotta work, but also I understand that you just you just saw your friend for the first time in months, and obviously like we did Zoom and different things like that, and it's fine, but it's not the same.
Not the same.
It's not the
Yeah,
same,
it's not the
and
same.
I think we know that, right? Like, and I doing trainings and different things like that, it can hold people over a little bit. I think the really dedicated people and like kids and different things like that, it can hold them over for the most part because they're also probably going outside doing stuff on their own.
Yeah.
But the ones that like they're just not the top level motivated kids. Like they're kind of stuck with like I don't really want to do that. I like playing. It's like you said, like the enjoyment of it. I enjoy playing soccer with my friends, with people out, competing. Those things. I'm not. That's not the same. Watching a coach
No,
tell me to do this.
and I think for the players, a lot of sort of fundamental movements have been lost.
Yeah.
So, they've gone from, as I said, really sociable, active young humans to being locked down. And the only way to sort of pass the time is playing on Xbox, PlayStation.
For
And,
sure.
and we've got to spare a thought for some children who haven't had a garden or a yard to play out in the summer.
Right.
They've been in a flat. So, how do we reintegrate them when they've seen the same four walls for the last 6-7 months or whatever it may be? So fundamental movements has been key for me, getting players to work on that and, get that movement back and that little bit of sharpness. But it's been a tough time for everyone, but it's also been great for me as a coach in a way to sit back and take stock, do some unbelievable amounts of learning.
Right.
But now, how do we transfer that onto the training field? And do we go all out with this knowledge that we've got and throw it in at risk of, complicating it and confusing the children? Or, look, Carl, there's nothing better than the game as a teacher.
Right.
So I think maybe that we have to be clever as coaches to make the game the teacher, and our session planning has to be better.
Well, for sure. No, and
So that the ball's rolling, and get them playing and contact time with the ball, and that this time of being locked down enables us to go, do you know what? And we've heard some horror stories. I'm sure you have over in the States of under 8 coaches pushing elite tests and press ups and all that nonsense. Just let them play. The children.
yeah.
Let the game be the teacher.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of those like horror stories that you hear, different things. But I do wonder because as we were going through it, our phases were different. So like when we got back, we didn't actually get fully back. It was basically individual team training, if that makes sense. So everyone has their own ball. They can't share the ball. So we had to, at first we actually made cone boxes and everyone had their own box. And when we just kind of did little sessions and different things like that, it progressed. And then, yeah, the moment we could have contact, it was pretty understood within our club. Like there's 5 of us and we were just like, yeah, we're scrimmaging. We're just going to literally like do a little warm up, put we couldn't have pennies, unfortunately. So like,
Yeah.
we had to, or well, you can, but they can't share. So it's like, all right, you're on that team for the day, basically. Throw the pennies out, throw the balls out, just go play, like, and because they need that. But for you guys, were you able when you got to go back? Was it back to normal training, or how did that work for you guys?
It's very similar to yourself there. With it, I was fortunate to be working with an under 13 side, and every player had a ball.
Okay.
Yes, it was frustrating because at times they just picked it up. They wanted to pick the ball up and throw it to the mate. So then you have to hand sanitize, clean the ball, isolate that ball, and I think like you mentioned there, you're trying to get them back into the game that they love,
Yeah.
but by keeping them apart still. And that was hard because they just want to be close and talk and play fight.
Yeah, it was an interesting thing because like it it was fine when it first happened. It was great, right? No one cared about the like concerts really. Like they were a little bothered because they want to like just play and everything, but ultimately they were closer to their friends than they've been in a while. They're outside, they're playing, that type of thing. But as you moved on, like it and I think as coaches is where I think we talked about it a lot. Like this isn't the game that we signed up to like coach. It's not the game that they signed up to play. It was draining. Like I remember being like more exhausted coming home from those training sessions. Not doing any more, probably doing less. But just because like you have to like kind of build yourself up to be like even more motivated than typical. I never have to like get super pumped up to go to training. But like to do that where like they're just in a box and they're doing the same thing and you make some like relay race where they got to go side to side in their box for the fifth time. In
Yeah,
it was it's tough. It's tough to motivate them, and so luckily we were able to transition to where like they were able to like pass the ball and different things like that. Because just that key component, like passing the ball, like that was enough for everyone to kind of like okay, this is better. This is better.
yeah,
And
yeah,
still couldn't tackle, which some kids were like, "Come on, I just want to hit somebody. Like, I want to fly in with
yeah,
a tackle. I want to slide and do those things." And it's like, all right, you gotta wait. But but for just about everybody, it's like, all right, this is better. This feels more like the game.
yeah. And I think you allude to it there. We were challenged as coaches to, there was that
Uh,
pressure to get back and play and have them outside doing activity. But then, how do you put them into an activity that one they're going to enjoy, two get benefit from, without making them fall out of love with the game or become frustrated at you? So, and I think you alluded to it there. Yeah, you were probably more drained as a coach because you were more conscious of what was going on in your session. Um, but again, I would say that it's probably made us better
oh,
coaches,
for sure.
more creative coaches, because you had to. There was no other way. You had to put something on that kept the players and the parents and any spectators safe, yourself safe and enjoyable. So it seems a long way away, to be fair. Um, it happened a long time ago, but I think the frustration was you've built up in that period and you've got them back playing games. And I'm not sure about your games program, but we were playing games, and then all of a sudden you're in a lockdown again, and then we're classed as a tier 4 now, which is tier 4 stay at home.
Yep.
So you can go outside with one person outside your bubble and exercise, but you have to stay 2 meters. Under 18s, you can't go out with because it's meeting more than one person from the house.
Right.
It's snowing, and we've got all these things now where the players again now have probably had 8 weeks without a game or training, and what effect is that going to have long term? And it's concerning for me.
Yeah, and I think it goes back to like what we talked about. Like it's not just like as coaches, like yes, I think we're paid to like worry about the football first and those things, but like the truth is like they're people, like you said before, and like so we're worried about. All right, they're clearly gonna lose like sharpness. They're gonna clearly lose some, probably some of the stuff that was almost muscle memory to them. Um, but they're also yeah, they're what are they the things that we don't see, what are they losing as well in all of this? What is getting set back, hopefully not years, but potentially years of like interaction and different things like that. We don't know. Obviously we're still in it, so can't really see down the line what impact it's going to have on people. And now I think the silver lining hopefully is the same with us as coaches, where I think we've had to become creative. I do think that in some cases the kids had to kind of be creative. It definitely was a way more adversity that they'd ever faced in their life, and so hopefully that's the silver lining is like this generation of kids is like I got locked down and couldn't leave my house for 8 months. I can handle some stuff.
That's it. I think, like you mentioned there, the bounce back ability of young people is that they're very versatile and they're very
Right.
adaptable. They've just been through what has been, like, we've never known it, and I hope we never see it again in our lifetime. But
Ever.
they're going to come out of this. I'm not going to say almost invincible, but I'd like to think a little bit more resilient, knowing that, listen, if I can go this long without football, and maybe some players have gone, this is how much I love football, and I know that was the case for myself, is that without football for the 3 to 4 months we had in England, I was lost.
Oh God,
I was really lost.
I joke about this, but it's serious. I was watching, I think, the Chilean first. I think it was their first, like, their top tier league. But I was watching anything I possibly could until it all got shut down, basically. And yeah, like, I was just looking for anything because obviously I played and then now I coach. This is my life, and so. It is like you do some soul searching because you're like, is what my life revolves around that, like, kind of that easy to kind of just remove? That's kind of terrifying to think about. But at the same time, what sounds like what we both did is like, no, I love this so much that even in the worst of times when it's taken away, we can find a way to still have it, which is, partially why I started this podcast. You talked about starting your podcast this year, and I think it goes back to, like, there's two decisions you make, right, in this whole thing when this happens. You either kind of just let it hit you and you just sit there and kind of take it, or and some people are in that situation, they can't help it. So I don't want to say like that it's like a pity thing or anything like that. There are people that are less fortunate than me where they don't have a choice. But those that have a choice, you can either kind of just sit there and be upset about it, or you can be like, I'm going to make the very best that I can out of this really terrible situation. And that's kind of what I did about it. It was like, I'm going to start a podcast. Only thing I can do is talk to people. So I'm just going to do it, and we'll see what it does. And, maybe I'll talk to more people. And obviously it's grown to the point where I'm now talking to people outside of my own circle and different things like that, which seems like is a similar story for you as well. So talk us through that, just how you got to the process of, like, I'm going to start this thing.
Well, I think I could probably go a little bit deep here, is that I was in a job that I really, really didn't enjoy. Phone sales. For those that will know me, will know that, yes, I like to talk about things that I love, and trying to sell, a 70-year-old woman an iPad and her latest upgrade wasn't what I'm about. I like to help people, and it came to and again, people that will know me is that I am quite opinionated in terms of if I believe in something, then
right.
I'm quite stubborn. And I didn't believe that job was right for me. So literally, I think 4 days before lockdown, I attempted an overdose because I hated the job. Fortunately, I'm still here, and that was a wake up call to say there's more to life than not being happy. So I left that job. And then I think 2 days later we were locked down. So I went into lockdown without a job. My own fault. All football had been cancelled, and I sat at a point thinking, well, where do we go from here? So being very fortunate with the networking through, the courses I've managed to attend and the roles that I've held, I thought, well, to keep saying, let's ask people. We're all in the same situation. We're all locked down. We can't go anywhere. And from there, I reached out, and the conversations came through. I think we're on 35 episodes now with different people in different roles in football, some professional players, some coaches, and listen, for me it was free CPD. It was a chance for me to to continuously develop as a coach and
Right.
and listen to these people speak. And look, some of the conversations left me mind blown, and I had to go back and visit it and listen to it again just to digest it. But the more that it's done, the more I've got a passion of hearing people's stories of how they've got to where they are.
Right.
So for example, there was one guest that we spoke to who was not paid by his club. I don't want to mention his name, but it's easily findable. But he wasn't getting paid by the club, and he spoke to the club about his mental health and how it was having an effect on him. The club chairman wasn't interested, and he ended up sleeping in his car between sort of paydays, and that's no way to live as a human,
No.
especially as a footballer, and obviously therefore it's having an effect on him on the pitch.
Right.
And it was really humbling to hear those stories of what people go through to exist and put food on the table. So I've really got a desire to listen and hear people's stories and give them a platform to tell those stories, because no doubt that there's somebody else in that situation who thinks, there's no light at the end of the tunnel, and the world's all doom and gloom. But you know what? It's not. There's some really good people out there, and there's some really inspirational stories, and I think it's great to hear them and share them.
No, absolutely. And obviously we're very happy that you're here talking to us here, and just like, I mean, like you said, like there's people that are going through similar stories to you, similar stories to the player in his car and different things like that. And there's going to be someone that hears this or hears his conversation or things like that, and the profound impact that you can have is immense. And so that thought, obviously, I don't think that I thought that when I was making this podcast that I was going to have some wide-reaching thing, but it's just the truth that you go back and we can see where people you can see where people are watching this from. It's like it kind of makes you sit there and think like, oh, this can actually reach reach people from all over the world. And so it is amazing that your story can be heard, and someone that you'll never meet in your entire life most likely could hear that and they can get something out of that. And obviously, I make jokes and talk about football, but someone like you who has a real story and has real struggles, that that is going to really mean something to somebody. And so that's amazing. And then to go on, we were talking about, the job, obviously, it got to a point that was too far, clearly, as far as being unhappy. But that's something that, when I talk to all of my players, especially my older players, right? My 2004s, which are 16 years old, I just tell them, I dropped out of college. I was playing college soccer. That's basically why I went there. My knee got torn up, and it was a point where it was tough to kind of progress and do anything with that. And I was going to school. I was good at it, but I was miserable. I was, working a waiting job. I was serving, and I was just I just was kind of walking through life, and never got to the point where I felt overly depressed or anything like that. And I would probably say that's mainly because of the people around me, and I have to, really big ups to them for never allowing me to get to that point and always kind of just trying to push me forward. But I was lost, kind of like what you were saying, without football, and I just was, I'm where do I go from here? And I dropped out of college. Shortly after that, I moved in with two other friends. So I'm not going to school. I'm going to go live on my own, basically. And then I also quit my job. Terrible timing. Awful. The worst of timing. I have to pay rent for the first time in my life, and now I quit my job, right? And so obviously I was in the midst of looking for a job, trying to figure out what I was going to do. Maybe I'll go back and play college soccer. But until then, I just can't do school. I won't go to the classes. I'm not motivated, those type of things. Luckily for me, I had a friend, lived with him. We've been friends forever, played soccer together. He was coaching at a local club, and he was like, listen, you're you're just a lazy sack right now. You're not doing anything anyways. Come help. We have like these young kids, like our we call it junior nationals. They're 3 to 8 year olds they're not on a team. It's just like a training program. He's like, you'll get paid a couple dollars. I didn't get paid, by the way, but I went, and I at that point I didn't want to coach. I had no desire to really coach, and so I went. I did a little bit of coaching, and I was like, this is awful, but I love it. Coaching little 3-year-olds is not the greatest thing on earth. I'm not gonna lie. It is a task, but I love it. This whole like coaching thing, like you give a little coaching point to a little kid, and then all of a sudden they do it, and like the light in their eyes, it's like, oh, I could do this, right? And so that, and like I only tell that story as like an example of, like, I tell my players is like, I don't ever allow something to be so miserable that that you are, unhappy in life. Always be uncomfortable, but never to a point where you're miserable. And I'm like, I dropped out of college to be a soccer coach. Like, I'm all about being happy in my life, clearly, because it's not about the money.
Nothing, and that's certainly one thing I've taken from the last 12 months, is that nothing is more important than your happiness.
Oh, for sure.
So you made a great point there. Always be uncomfortable, because it makes you do more. And just to add, sort of a bit of context to why I was in the phone job, I left the army after 12 years. Four tours of duty, loved life, but I was freshly married, and I'd been in the army since 16 years old, and it was time to set up a family. So I came out with this disillusion of grandeur that I'm going to walk straight out and be a football coach, and that didn't happen. So I spent quite a few years dipping in and out of jobs because it wasn't the army, and it got to a point where I had to seek help because I struggled to adapt. And we were talking 4 years down the line here, get your first break in the game with a professional club, and you think, brilliant, this is it. And then you see what goes on in football. Yeah. And the club I was working with, out of the 9 months that I was there, I was paid on time once. So, for the next 8 months, we're talking about not being paid on time, being treated not great, and having a wife who was pregnant with our second child, not telling her that mortgage payments weren't going out. So it was tough, but I think sometimes you have to do what you have to do to survive. And
for sure,
leaving that club. Not long after that, I had to take this job to put food on the table. And look, everything happens for a reason. And I think you alluded to it earlier. When you're faced with adversity, there's two ways: you can either sink or you can swim. And as long as it may look calm on the surface, but underneath that water, there's a hell of a lot of kicking going on just to keep afloat. And fortunately, we're in a good position now where both girls are healthy, and we got that little break, or should I say, I got that little break in football, and it makes you the coach that you are. And when you do get the opportunity to work with players, and listen, it's a blessing. Anybody who gets to work with players on a daily or weekly basis, it's a blessing.
For sure.
So I feel very, very grateful for the opportunities that I get, and it's been a long time and a hard path to get there. But the most difficult paths have often the most beautiful destinations. No,
absolutely. And I mean, I think, for me, I think probably the most, obviously there's a lot of different things within coaching and what makes a good coach, or different things like that. For me, when I look at like a coach and what makes them great is like their ability to adapt. And I think that might be the number one thing, is like your ability to adapt in every situation. And so like these, the stories that we talk about, right? Like we tell about dealing with these things, like it just kind of goes towards us as coaches. Like, look, I was able to adapt from this way worse situation. I can probably figure out how to beat a press right? Like,
Yeah.
like I can I can figure out how to break down a press, or I can figure out how to do different things like that, and change formation, change personnel, whatever it is. Like that stuff is incredibly difficult at times, especially depending on your team setup, that kind of stuff. But it doesn't it falls well short of some of the other things that you face in your life as far as hardships and different things like that. So I think it molds you into the type of person that is going to make a better coach for sure.
Yeah, and look, if you go into coaching solely with the idea of just being a coach in terms of football, then you'll get lost very quickly.
For sure.
You're not just a football coach.
No.
You're a mentor. You're a therapist. We've all done it. Shoelace tire, but you're also that guidance for the parent, and you're that honesty, and you're that mentor, and there's just so many roles, and I think coaching just, speaking personally, makes you a better person for me, because look, there's this buzz about Klopp and putting the person before the player, but he's right.
Oh, for sure.
He is right. We're not footballers. We are people that play or love and enjoy football.
Yeah.
So treat them right, and they'll come on the journey with you. And listen, if you treat them right, then they will work. They will work for you as long as they know that you care.
Yeah, and I think for me, like that's something that, like, I've talked about this. Like, I know, like, I'm surrounded by great people, without a doubt, within my club, but I know I'm not the greatest, like, coach, right? Like, there's someone that can teach technique better than me. There's someone that can teach tactics better than me. There's someone that can do whatever. The thing that I know that I'm good at is, like, I'm going to create a relationship with all of my players to the point where, like, they are like, I'm going to play, I'm going to buy into whatever he says, and, like, that, I'm like, I will take that. I will be that person, right? Like, man manager, whatever you want to call it, I'm fine with that. Obviously, the other stuff has to, to be successful, you probably have to get the other stuff as well. But I do think, like, that is that's why I've had any successes, because, I went into it with a background of, like, just having a relationship with people, right? Like, everything happens for a reason. I shouldn't, like, me being a server, giving people food, taking orders and stuff like that, I never saw that in my future. But, like, it worked out for what I'm doing, and it doesn't seem like it, but, like, when you think about it, it's like, I was terrible at, like, serving. I would forget people's orders and different things like that, but I was amazing at it at the same time, because all I would do was I would make sure that whoever was at my table had the greatest experience, because we would just create some relationship. And so when I forgot their thing, I'd be like, hey, what'd you say again? And then, like, they didn't even think about it, because they were so happy to just, like, talk and whatnot. And so it's translated onto the soccer field. And obviously, I have a little bit more responsibility. So if I forget some stuff, it is all on me there. But everything you do, it's like you said, everything happens for a reason and stuff like that. And so, yeah, I think that ability to, garner respect and trust is the number one thing that you can, that's like, as far as youth coaching, right? Like, if you can make them feel like they matter and that they're loved, oh, it's over. You've created something for life for them.
Well, outside of the home environment, who's the second most important person in these players' lives?
Yeah.
It's their coach, and that's where our boundaries as coaches, as that secondary attachment, are very similar to the parents. But you often find that our boundaries are probably a little bit stricter and tighter than schools at times. And as I alluded to before, we're creating people, and did I ever think that when I was on my last tour of Afghan out on the ground, I'd be sat in a call centre selling mobile phones? Absolutely not. But again, having that experience of dealing with adversity, dealing with customers who weren't so friendly, it allows you to listen more. And I've probably become a better coach now because I listen more. I'm not saying I never listened in the past, but I probably neglected that and we've all done it as coaches.
Oh yeah.
Listen, I'm the one with the ideas. This is all the answers. And no, it's not. and the more you listen, the more you'll get back. And for me, look, everything has a reason. And, when do we ever get to that final destination? That peak, that final journey? Probably not. But along the way, we get a little bit better, a little bit greater in the things we do, a little bit more holistic. And, when we come to sitting on our rocking chair at, 80 years plus, we can look back and say, hopefully we've added value to people's lives.
Yeah, I mean that's the biggest thing is like I think to be in coaching, and obviously if you're a professional player and then you kind of get like thrust into like these big jobs, maybe it's a little bit different. But I think for us that you start at the ground level, and it is the ground level. You have to go into it with like the mindset. I think no one kind of gets. You have to get into it, especially if it sticks, right? Like you did something because you wanted to impact people, right? And at least for me, it's like I don't know what other way I can impact people more than having it coincide with the game that I love and played and know, right? It's the one thing that I feel like confident about that I know for sure, and it's like that is I can also impact a lot of people, right? Like you talked about like your club, as when you were chairman and had 30 teams, like that's kind of the way that youth teams are set up in America as well. And so, U8 all the way to U19, and that's what we have. Have one or two teams hopefully for that as well. That's a lot of kids, a lot of families that you are around, and it's a lot of people you can potentially impact. Which, to be fair, is absolutely terrifying. It's an absolutely terrifying thought. Like things that I do can have a long-lasting, like life-impacting, like impact on these kids. I don't know who trusted me with that responsibility, but I'm gonna do my best, I guess. Like that's where I'm at.
Yeah, and look, the pressure as a coach, how many times, and I'm sure your listeners will agree, have you been on that training field or in a game and something's happened, and next thing you know, you've got 10 sets of eyes looking at you going, come on, do something.
Yeah.
And you've got that responsibility of all these children you put on a pedestal. So you really, really have to think about why you coach. I think that's the most important thing. Why do you go in the rain, snow, sideways rain to work with kids that you've probably got no affiliation to, no relation to, or even adults? Why do you do it? And for me, mine is I just love this game.
Right.
I have an idea of how I'd like it to be played. I'd like it to be exciting. I'd like it to be enjoyable. And I want it to be inclusive, because what we might, look, we can speak all day about it. You always get the chat from parents, oh, little Johnny's not good enough, get him out of the team. And then 2 years later, in the same team, he's the best player. And, you have to be a bit thick-skinned to take like a bit of criticism and stick to your guns. But if you believe in something, then believe in it. Nobody's able to take that opinion away from you. And if you're the one who has joined this, not just this lockdown, but spend late nights planning and looking at courses and doing CPD and learning, then you're working for that. You decide that that's going to be the focus that you go down. And the responsibility, unbelievable. But the rewards, I think, are even better.
Oh, absolutely. It goes back to like what I said. I had very small responsibility, but the reward of just like seeing a kid do something, it's not that I taught them that. It's the excitement they get from learning that, right? Like that kind of stuff. And it is beyond measure, like how much joy that can bring you, for sure. And the truth is, like, that example is one of very few, because in this game, results don't come that quick. It is the long game, without a doubt, for sure. What I wanted to go ahead.
Sorry, I was just going to say,
No,
football
absolutely.
It's about moments.
Yeah, for sure.
Moments for a lot of these grassroots kids that they will remember. And you know for a fact, some of those moments that you strike up when little Jack scores his first goal and runs up to his dad and jumps on him, and the embrace for that first time and that element of pride, that beats any result, any cup, any success for me. They are the moments that, as grassroots coaches, we live for.
Yeah, no, without a doubt. I couldn't agree more. What I do want to talk about, because you were talking about like people studying and getting educated during the lockdown, and it just had me thinking, because we did talk a little bit before we started recording about the way that the education system is set up over there compared to here, and it's, at least for me, it seems very different. I don't know that. Obviously, like I said, I think in our system it's very just one way, one direction. You go here at the top, you can kind of youth or pro, and that's kind of it. How does, and obviously you've gone through, I think you said level 4. You've done a lot of education and different courses and stuff like that. So how does it look there compared to here?
Complicated,
Yeah.
but it used to be very linear. So the old English sort of pathway was level 1, level 2,
Okay.
level 3, which was your B license, level 4 A license, level 5 pro license, and then they sort of changed the program to include youth awards. So there were 3 modules. Youth Award Module 1, which was about creating an environment. So you learn how to, arrival activities, things like getting players engaged from the
Right.
get-go, getting the ball rolling. And then Module 2, and these were done, sort of, I'd say 6 months apart. Module 2 was about developing your practice. So how can your practice get better, but whilst being similar to the game and not too far from the game? So I think the biggest lesson I probably learned from that youth award was, if I got my TV remote and pressed pause during the training session, if I picked it up and placed it onto match day, does it fit?
Right.
If it doesn't, then what are we teaching the players?
Yeah.
Are we teaching them something that's not relevant? And then when it comes to match day on Sunday, going, well, why hasn't little Johnny done this? Well, have we taught them? And then Youth Award Module 3 was about knowing your players. So getting to know why they play, the psychological side, the social side.
Oh, nice.
And after that, you then had to take an assessment to show understanding and learning of all 3 modules. And I attended the Module 3 and was fortunate to be around some fantastic coaches and realised that I was nowhere near their level. So I took the full sort of 2 years of mastering those modules and understanding the content before taking the assessment. I'd always wanted to go as far as I could, and that was prior to doing my UEFA B license. So coming out of, like I say, the British Army, and as a level 2 coach, I was fortunate to work with a fantastic tutor within the Army. Going on to the B license, where you're now taking it pretty seriously, was a big eye opener in terms of sort of the tactical side that you would work on. And I think I've always been hungry for more. So certainly from my time in the Army, I never just wanted to stay at that rank.
Yep.
I wanted to be the next one. I wanted to be on the next course. I wanted
Right.
to be the next pay grade. And it's been the same with coaching, and it's probably been a bit to my detriment, if I'm honest now, is that I've always been chasing that next job, that next role,
Right.
without mastering where I am. Now, as soon as I finished the UEFA B license, I went straight into applying for the A license to get my name in the system. And I'm fortunate now, 2 years later, I'm currently studying the UEFA A license and the elite youth license. So squeezed in between that was, once you've completed the youth award module. So, and I will send you a diagram over that probably describes it better than I am, is that at the top of the youth award then became the advanced youth award.
Okay.
So you then go to certain phases. So we mentioned the PDP.
Yeah.
And the role that I'm working in, that's the professional development phase. So you're working with players between 17 and 21. You've got the youth development phase, which is ages 12 to 16, and then the foundation development phase, which is from year 7s to 11s, sort of the golden age of learning. And
Right.
at the time, I was working with an under 12s team, so I applied for the course. and I was fortunate to get on there. And again, the level of, I'd probably say the Advanced Youth Award has been the best course to date because of how much you learn in terms of long-term player development in that age group.
Okay.
So I can remember sat in a workshop with a lady called Philippa McGregor, a psychologist, and speaking about the adolescent brain and everything that the players go through, going from
Wow.
junior school to high school, and under 9v9s to 11v11, and
Right.
I came away from the course with a headache, and had that headache for about 2 days because of the amount of information and detail that we were given. And I think if you're going to go and chase a career in football full time, you've got to be committed and willing to pay a large amount of money, because these courses don't come cheap.
No. Yeah, that's
as you're probably
that,
aware as well.
and I would say that is one of the, and I don't know if it causes an issue there, but it is definitely an issue here where some of the amounts of money you have to pay for these licensing it keeps people from doing it.
It's a stumbling block.
Yeah, it's a really tough thing, and the truth is, like, from what I'm hearing from yours is, and I've taken courses, other people have taken courses. You get something from it, but I don't think I would say most coaches would agree that you're not getting as much from it. It's really just about the testing portion, right? Like, these two coaches or three coaches that are your instructors believe that you're a good enough coach to have this license? If so, you pass. Great.
So that used to be how the English FA
Yep.
worked. It used to be, it was, you'd attend the days that you had to go, and then you'd go to an assessment day. You'd have 16 other coaches doing the sessions, and you do 10 sessions back to back. So if you were last, you'd have all the tired legs and maybe session assassins, as you would call it, and then you were deemed competent or non-competent.
Right.
Now, the way that the English FA have changed it, and I think for the better, is that you have study visits or club visits. So the tutor or the mentor will come and visit you in your club, in your environment, with your players, because it's easy to not be you for an hour.
Yeah.
So if you're to pass a level 2, for example, so my level 2, for example, 32 coaches, 2 days, 16 sessions back to back. And you were either deemed competent or not competent. You had to go away and work on it, and it was quite unfair, because at times you'd have players with injuries because of the demands of the session. Whereas my UEFA B license, it was with my club, and I was very fortunate to be working again full time. So it was about the environment. What do the players do in between games and sessions? So one of my visits was a day after the game. Now, we would usually have the day off, but we had to bring the players in and do a tactical session,
right,
to be seen as being able to develop that. And I think, fortunately, the tutor understood that we had a game the night before. So it's more about you and your players now. There is still that pass and fail element.
Yeah.
But I think it's more competent or not competent.
Yeah.
Are you ready for the level of application?
And I don't really mind that. I think that is a good thing. Like, right? I think that, especially if the licenses are meant to open doors and they're a barrier of entry for certain jobs and different positions, there should be an element of, like, if you're not good enough, you shouldn't go through. Where anyone who's trying to pursue more education for the game and different things like that, like, all kudos. But the truth is, there are times where there are people that they shouldn't get past, but they paid. We have homework that you have to do over the course. They did all the homework. So, let's just push them through, because they'll pay for the next license as well. And it's like, does that really help the game? And so it's interesting, because the way that the only recognized licenses are through the governing body, right? But there's actually another organization that does courses, and you can get, like, call it advanced national or your national youth diploma.
Okay.
So it sounds similar to kind of like the youth stuff that's going on. And without a doubt, anyone who has taken those courses have all agreed and always agreed that those are way better. You get so much more out of them. The problem
Yeah.
is, they still cost money, and you don't get anything for them except for to better yourself as a coach. And you're better for you, you're better for your players, but at the end of the day, you're kind of deterred from taking those things because it's like, well, I'm gonna pay whatever, a grand or so, maybe more, however much it is, and I'm not gonna get anything out of that as far as like immediate return. And so it's tough, right? Like, because you can understand, like, as a soccer coach in America, right? Like, we don't make a lot of money, so it's like I can understand why you don't want to spend a good amount of money on something that can never like at least visually help you, right? Like, that piece of paper is not going to help you the same way a D license, a C license, a B license would from the actual federation. And so, but at the same time, it's like, but if you're better from it, that should show through in the long run. You're a better coach now. You should get better jobs because of that. And so, because of that, like, there's that like there's a lot of discrepancies. The education system in the United States is very out of whack, and they're constantly changing it. And for me, they still haven't got it right. But you know,
I think for me, no matter what course you do, it's not that isn't the be all and end all. Yes, you
yeah,
might be pass or fail. The real learning goes back in your club with the
hundred
players.
percent.
So, there's been courses that I've been on and gone, I've not really taken anything from that.
Yep.
However, the tiny thing that I've taken from it, I've implemented or tried to work with my players
Yep.
and then learned from that. Whereas the Advanced Youth Award, I came away from that with so much knowledge and in fact, I probably came away with more questions than I did answers of why do we do this? Why am I doing that?
Right.
Why does the club that I'm working with say I've got to do this?
Right.
And probably, and again, those who know me is that I would then probably put myself in a bad light here, but challenge those processes and say, well, why are we doing that?
Right.
Because I feel that the tempo of the session or the players are standing around too long. If we did this, they're playing, there's more touches, they're getting a physical return. But then sometimes, again, you hit with, yeah, but we've always done that. Well, if you've always done what you've always done, you'll always get what you've always got.
Yeah.
And again, that can set you in a bad light. But again, I truly believed in it. I truly believe that I didn't think it benefited the players.
Right.
And we did tweak it as part of my case studies. We tweaked it, and the gains and the returns that we saw was that players were stronger, players were fitter, they were sharper, they were playing an extra game every cycle. So instead of playing 2 games within the training and the small-sided games that we had, they were now playing 3, or the total of 3 games. So they would get better prepared for the physical demands of the game, and you got more buy-in from the players because ultimately it was the game.
Right.
But the learning came from the planning, I would say, is that how do I get what I want through my design with minimal interruption?
Absolutely.
And that was the biggest thing for me.
No, and it is. I think the thing with like history and things like that, right? Like, you never want to disrespect history or like, tarnish it. But I think there always has to be a willingness to question it, right? Like, what I mean is, like, yes, this is how we've done it, and I want to respect that, and like I want to hold the values that have been in place. But if there's a better way to do something, the history can't matter more than what's best going forward. It'll always be there.
The game's always evolving,
Yeah,
and the
always.
second that as a coach, a player, a club, management staff, whatever, the minute you stand still, you're left behind.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt at the time that the club, in terms of producing players, were being left behind. And speaking to look, I was exposed to a fantastic level of coaching. I can only hope that one day I'll be on that level. But I'm speaking to coaches at like Arsenal and Liverpool and Manchester United, and they're telling me some of the things that they do within their program that don't need a lot of money. It just needs a creative and intuitive coach to believe that this might work. And
Right.
Look, if you ever get a chance, I'm not sure if you've heard of him, a gent on Twitter, you can find him, called Paul McGuinness.
Yeah.
Who, oh, what a genius!
Yep.
What a genius! And I could get lost watching his sessions, but they were so. I think the genius in it was how simple it was, and how close to the game that he made it.
Right.
So why do we need to put players in line drills? Why do we need to make players stand still for a little while? Especially in the winter months, get them playing, get them moving. They'll want to run more. They'll want to work more. They'll want to get on the ball. They'll want to try stuff to please you. And within 2 weeks, you're getting, out of those 4 sessions, you're getting another 80 minutes of game relative situations for them.
Yeah, I've kind of I think there's time for like them to like have to be still and different things like that. And I think it's you can kind of do some of that stuff, but and it's needed, especially when like you're maybe teaching something very specific, right? Mm-hmm. But other than that, I would say that's like a 5% of like the training you do, but 95% of it should be action, should be moving. People should be going at all times and different things like that, if possible. It goes back to like they're gonna enjoy it more. They're gonna get more out of it. It's gonna feel more competitive. It's gonna feel game like you're saying. And typically, yeah, in my and obviously I have been doing it for about 3 years now, so limited. But in my experience, it's always been more effective. If they're going, if they're more excited about what they're doing, it usually ends up working out better and being more beneficial for sure.
Well, you look at the initial conversations that you have with players when they arrive. What is usually the first thing that comes out of their mouth when they arrive to your session? Are we having a game?
Yeah, 100%.
So and look, there's practices that can do that. Why not let them have a game? And I think for me, it's more effective when you do go in and speak to a player and say, "Listen, pal, I've got some great advice for you here. Would you like to learn from it?" And they get excited that you're helping them. And that was just my opinion. That's taken 16 years of coaching to understand and realize,
right.
not just a course. And I think trial and error is great.
Oh yeah.
Look, I've probably got more sessions wrong than I have right, and I'm more than happy with that, because we're always adapting. But I think if you then reflect while on it and go, do you know what, this is what I was trying, it didn't work because of this and this, your whole session design next time becomes better to allow less intervention and more game time.
Yeah. The greatest tool we really have is kind of failure, right? I messed this up. All right, how did I mess this up? What can I do better? Great. And then you just keep doing it. And it's just like a bunch of failures after another, because guess what? As long as you are willing to learn from them and not like make excuses, you will end up being very successful. Because if you make all the failures you can make and you learn from them, you're going to just have a ton of success. Like, that's just how this works. Problem is, a lot of people, and I think we all get like this, we don't want to fail. Yeah, and it's not a good feeling. And so like it is hard. Like, there are times where I'm like, I don't just like take the like I'm learning from this. I get annoyed, I get mad, I get whatever it is, and it takes me a little bit of time for me to just like, all right, calm down. Let's think about this. How did we fail? Why did we fail? Let's learn from this.
We're ultimately judged on results.
Yep.
That's from any outside point, you're judged on results. And if you've lost a game 2-1 but played really well, people won't remember how you played. They remember the score.
Yep.
But the people that do remember how you played are the players. And if you continue to try and help them be better players, better people, play better football, teach them the game, you're going to get more returns. Yep. And for me, look, it probably makes me look a really bad coach now that since July 2020, I've won one game of football. And was that a game where we learned a lot because we had 11 players. We didn't have any substitutions, men's game, and the other games we've lost heavily. So it's been a process of, right, this is where we need to work on. We work on. But if we'd have won every game, what would we probably learn from that?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I have again going back to my oldest team. Last year, we learned a ton. We had small number roster, um, you know, getting guest players, different things, but we won all of our games. We did. It was pretty much I mean, we won our league. We won every tournament we played in. And then what happens is you flip around to this year, and you have all of the things going wrong. You got in. I have COVID, and then two of my best players get injured. Those things. We don't win a single game, right? And I've told them this. I promise you, we've learned more this year than we did last year. And if we don't, we failed. That's the real failure. Losing these games, it sucks. It hurts. I'm mad. You're mad. I get it. But the real failure will be if we don't learn anything at all from this season, and not just as a team, not just as players, but as people, right? Like we learn what what can go wrong when we don't have the right mentality, when we don't have the right plan set forth for ourselves, the right routine, those type of things. Because we had basically this perfect world last year where we had a good situation. This year, in a very imperfect world, in a very imperfect situations, we failed and we lost. But how do you rebound? How do you figure out what to do from there? And yeah, I mean, as a coach, oh God, I learned a lot. Some stuff I didn't
For
want to
me,
learn.
I wouldn't maybe say it was failure
Yeah, for sure.
because, and it's the same as you might win a game, but is that winning?
Yeah,
That's just it's based on one game. So
100%.
you know, for me, define winning and losing, and then get deeper into it. So I've already won this season for me
Yeah,
in terms of I'm in a fortunate yet difficult position with Witten where I have three goalkeepers, but only 9 outfield players. So one of the goalkeepers has said he will play outfield. He has now decided that he prefers playing out as a right back more than a goalkeeper and is becoming a student of the game. So for me, that's a win
right.
because I've helped a player fall in love with the game more. If he'd have stayed and said he wanted to be a goalkeeper, he probably wouldn't have got as much game time being a first year student because the second years will gain more game time physically.
For sure.
And have we failed? Maybe, but I've certainly won in terms of developing players. That's how I'm taking this season up until now.
Yeah, I think you're definitely not wrong. I think in every situation there's wins and losses, right? Like there's success and failures in probably everything. Like you said, even in games you win, as good as it feels, you probably weren't perfect. There's things to find that you did wrong, and that is kind of the. I never want to lose a game. I don't. I am the most competitive, and to a fault. But I know now as a coach and as I'm getting older, like I'm gonna learn more from when we lose games. So I almost want to lose some game. I want to lose games a little bit. There's a little part of me. It's a lot smaller than the part of me that wants to win. But there's a
Yeah,
part of me that's like, maybe if we lose this game, I'll learn more because there's been games where, for an example, we win a game 5-0 last year. They're not getting out of like. Clearly, we were better than that team. And honestly, like I told him, I was like, we didn't play all that great. You just we have better players. So it's like there's not as much to learn from that. Especially like, but when we lose a game 2-1 and they score in the 90th minute, oh, there's a lot to learn from that game. I promise you.
yeah, and there's always an element of learning from anything in the game. I think winning can often paper over cracks.
Oh yeah,
and disguise things if you're winning. But again, I think that comes down to you individually as a coach. How much do you reflect and analyze your performance?
I would definitely agree. And I think we can talk about this all day, but it's about 5 minutes and Stoke's going to be playing, and I wouldn't want you to miss that, just like I don't want to miss any United games. But, look, I do appreciate you. Before you go, I want you to be able to plug anything, all the stuff that you got. Remind everybody, I know we've talked about it all, but just where they can find you, where you're going to be, different things like that.
Fantastic. I appreciate that. The PCT podcast is available on Spotify, Apple iTunes, Alexa, all good platforms. I'm more than happy to take messages and get in touch. You can find me on LinkedIn, Martyn Irvine, or on Twitter, it's Irvine Stoke 8. Feel free to drop me a message, and I always love talking football. I don't think there's anything better. But Kyle, I want to say thank you, mate, for reaching out and allowing me to have a chat about football. And I'm loving the little decor in the back of Sir Alex. So, I really appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. And he's not kidding about he'll take messages. This all sprung from just one message on Twitter, me going on a little following spree, and I was just kind of looking at who followed me back, and I was like, oh, that's some interesting things. I think we could probably have a good conversation, and we definitely did, and I hope it's not the last one we have for sure. I wish you luck. I wish Stoke luck today, and I look forward to talking to you soon. Thanks. I appreciate it.
Thank you, mate.
Yep, it's been Tactical Foul. I'm Kyle Grew.
Stay safe and
go for it. Yeah, you got to stay safe.
Stay safe. Keep in touch, and thank you ever so much for the opportunity.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks, guys. Peace.